Chris and Anna have asked us to cover lesson planning in their absence, and so we'll do that. Have a break for you guys. More parking lot questions. We'll talk about assessment. I know Deidre's been out to see some of you, observe some of you, sent out a lesson plan, and there might have been questions about the lesson plan. So we'll go through it, and we'll go through the sections about what those things are and give you a bunch of resources. We'll also talk about rubrics, leave time for questions, and then we've got a little homework. We added in a little, I shouldn't even say homework.
No homework.
I shouldn't even say homework. Activity, and then just something to wrap up today.
Okay, so it says here, if we all teach the same topic, such as careers and resumes, why don't we all use the same lessons? And
I think it comes to, I'm sorry, what did you say?
Well, I was going to kind of go based on the lessons are going to be different. Every career that we choose is different. So based on the lessons, they're similar in the way that we plan them. However, the material that we're going to teach and the subject matter is going to be completely different. For example, we can be teaching auto and someone can be teaching medical, and the premise pretty much be the same, to take the information and give it to the students, but the information that we're giving out to the students is going to be completely different.
Exactly. In fact, just thinking about the different industries you talked about. For example, if you're talking about, let's say, doing a lesson on resumes, some places have resumes, others in digital might require a more digital portfolio. So it's different. Same idea, it's just a different way of doing it. So every industry has a different type of lesson, plus it comes down to your style too. If you think about it, some people are more visual in their style, others can use labs and assessments that way. So it just depends on the industry, your teaching style altogether.
The key assignments may also differ from subject to subject.
It won't work in my time frame, and maybe Stuart's, just because the intake of students is different at different times, so I'm constantly teaching it. It's not anything I can just break down for 2 weeks. I have to make it like part of an everyday subject,
because that person could be there for a couple weeks, a month, and then they're moving on.
Yeah. So I got to make it to where, almost like to where I got a checkout list for the students. So I got to figure out which ones are leaving, and say I need to give them all this information before they go out in the real world.
You might find that you can get some stuff from your sector partners, the people that are teaching the same thing that you are, or similar things. Like maybe you can glean things from them there and share that kind of information in the lesson. But Marcos and Jason and James bring up good points about the different things in each industry. I know there has been some push to kind of get some standardized lesson plans in people's hands. That seemed to kind of, it wasn't there, but it seems to have ramped up in the last couple of years. I don't know that Chris and Ellen are working on anything exactly yet.
So that was my question. Almost all of us, the first 4 or 5 different areas, talk about leadership, career development. Doesn't matter what industry we're in, everybody here covers that. I get it for Orangewood and things like that, where they only have kids for a short time. I'm talking about the regular high schools that have these kids for a whole year, right? Yes. So, for example, we're getting ready, our school's now getting ready to go, because we're going to do mock trials in a couple weeks. Mock interviews, I'm sorry. Yeah. And so we're all getting ready for resumes and stuff. And so there is not, we should all standardize how we're doing those particular lessons when we're talking about resumes. I have a separate portion that I do for law enforcement, of course, but I want these kids to know a more generic way, as you're saying, because they're not going into law enforcement straight out of high school. They need to have the basic skills on how to do an interview, basic skills on how to write a resume, and it doesn't matter what career field you're in. There's some basic ideas and principles that should be taught. And we were finding out too that some of the teachers that have maybe been disconnected from careers for a long time we're still having the kids fill out paper resumes. I don't think there's a single industry that takes paper resumes anymore. And they didn't even talk about social media. They don't talk about, a lot of the things that are very relevant to today. And so, but if we had a standardized lesson plans for those topics that we all teach anyways, it might, it would make it easier for us because we wouldn't all have to develop lesson plans for it. But more importantly, then all the kids would be getting the same information no matter if they're coming to my class or they're going to Christian's class and across the hall or anything else. They would all be well prepared for those mock interviews. They'd all be prepared to fill out a resume, no matter what industry they choose to be into.
And even if it's not the same across all industry sectors, at least there's something. You're not starting from scratch.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just think that at least for those first 4 or 5 different, things that we all have to teach that are all standardized the same should be
What we're going to
lesson
do
plans
with
for that.
What we're going to do with lesson planning today is we are going to work on one of those key assignments because it affects everyone across the board. The CRSs, the Career Readiness Specialists, have been in this week, I believe, going through some of that stuff that they can take back to their campuses. I will check and find out, and we'll post that afterwards. But
In fact, no one's even doing
Good
paper
points.
applications anymore. In fact, I saw a kid filling out an application on a tablet.
Yeah,
But it was like very basic stuff.
there was a couple weeks going through paper applications, and by the end, I was not passing that up at all.
No.
I just left USC in February, and they won't take an online application.
Wow.
They won't take it online.
You better come in and fill out the paperwork.
I think that they need to know how to fill it out, whether, they need to know both. They need to know how to fill it out on paper,
though anymore.
because they need to be familiar with the things that you put on a paper application.
And some of it can be industry as well too. Certain
They're gonna put
industries
it online anyway.
are
because
moving
online
electronic
application
quicker
is paper, but it's
than
just
all.
digital.
I did find out the mental health department
It's
of,
digital copy.
when you wanted your application to go in faster, the trick is to have a paper and you turn it in, not digital. Because then you talk to somebody in the department and your application gets picked up first.
Even on EdJoin, when you go in and you put your application, some places will not, they don't want you to do it digital, they want a paper application. If you've not experienced that, they say, no, you can't do your application online. You have to go directly to their website, print out the application. So I think they need to know both.
Yeah, I'm not discounting that, and that's not what I was meaning. It's just for us to completely ignore the digital age and not talk about social media and the effects that has on your application process. The first thing employers do nowadays is they search your name and Facebook and LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff. And
Google search.
And going back to the portfolio, sometimes that portfolio is, especially if you talk about graphic design or video game or whatever, let's see your website and how you set that up. Let's see a sample of your work, if it's video production or something. And sometimes in addition to that paper or online application, then there's that visual aspect, which is social media, the websites, portfolios, all that stuff. You guys have anything to add as far as that? Not saying
Not
that.
right now.
So, yeah.
And this is yours to keep. This is a takeaway. But when you're doing lesson planning, and hopefully this looks familiar. This is one you got sent to you. And if not, it's just a generic one. We'll put it in the resource material, so if you want to refer to it, you can. But when you're doing lesson planning, you're kind of asking yourself, well, what are you teaching? So up in the subject area, what are you teaching? Overview and purpose of the lesson, and then there's a spot for objective. Why are you teaching it? Well, what's the objective? I want students to learn interviewing skills. I want them to successfully interview for employment. How are you teaching it? Things here on the left-hand side like input, modeling, checking for understanding, and how are you evaluating for learning? Talk a little bit about guided practice and independent practice. So just to go through here, overview and purpose of what you're teaching. Anticipatory set. How will you create interesting or hook your
students?
How will you create interest or hook your students? What do any of you do to kind of get your students interested in what they're doing for the day? Or what's your attempt to get students interested?
Hands-on stuff.
Everything is a competition. I just handed out Kit Kats and
Dr. Peppers and hot Cheetos today for stuff from last week.
Shelley, you're saying
Hands-on activities,
hands-on activities, videos. Might be a video playing as
Quizlet
they're
or Kahoots.
might be video playing as they're coming in. Might be music playing. Might be using music cues. It might even be something that you set up with them the day before, like you prep them. This is what we're doing. It might have been part of closure. So it kind of cyclical. Objective. Input. How will you provide needed information? How are you going to fill their little minds? Sometimes it's lecture. Sometimes they're taking notes. Somehow it might be a hands-on activity where they're getting that information. Modeling. You're demonstrating, and it could be in what your movement, your actions, what you're telling them. You might be doing something up on the screen overhead.
Could even be a lab. Also.
Might be doing something on the computer and they're seeing it happen, and then they're going to have a chance to do it as well too. With some assignments, you might be modeling the assignment. I know of people who have, the kids are at home, their kids are at home doing the assignment, so they've got an example to show. Because I always know if I showed an example, I got better results. I couldn't just say what I wanted. I had to kind of give some sort of roadmap or guidance on what it was going to look like. Checking for understanding. Could be doing polls, could be doing little Quizlets, quizzes, Kahoots to see if there's things that they're getting, that they're understanding. Questioning their questions or your questions to them. Guided, they might be doing in class. You helping along. You're kind of following along. You're facilitating. There's multiple opportunities for practice. It's not just one time, for example. But they might be working in groups. Independent might be some sort of test. That's them actually doing it themselves. Have they gotten this concept, this idea? I know when I was doing lesson planning, I would always do a lot of Google searches for these things and look for examples as well too. And I know I didn't always fill this out for everything, and there might be things missing and that would come along. I kind of wish I had had a more simplified version like this. I'll pass you out one later that's much more complicated.
So what's the difference between this and doing your daily, your not your topic calendar, but your weekly planner?
If I'm understanding you, if I'm thinking of the same kind of thing, this would go into more depth, I think. This would go into more detail about the actual day by day or what's happening throughout the period. I used like a weekly planner that might just have the topics, but I didn't really go into any detail on a weekly planner. Do you?
Well, the weekly planner that I was given, I don't know if everybody else, we should all have the same weekly planner. It'll have Monday through Friday, and the first thing it says is objective, like what's your objective for the day. The second thing is,
Activities.
second one is activities, right? Yeah, so it'll say objective, activities, and materials. So if I give them a handout, or if we go in the clinic and we do stuff in the clinic, that's what I'm using every day.
I want one of those.
So I kind of do that every day. I didn't know what the difference was between that and this.
I'd still say this is more detailed, this is more thorough.
Okay.
It's almost like a sneak
We do
preview.
this every day? How often?
No, because, no. Deborah said we're supposed to do this every day. No. What if the lesson you're doing covers 2 weeks? What if it covers a month? What if there's pieces that are part of that weekly planner
Mm-hmm.
that just breaks it down a little bit, that you know what you need to assignments and stuff? And this might be the entire lesson that's going on for a long time. This might be one of all those big chunk key assignments.
Is anybody else doing the weekly planner?
Yeah, weekly planner for sure.
Oh, okay.
I'm doing a weekly, but it's so watered down and so generic. I'm just putting generically what I'm going to do. It's not detailed at all.
Yeah, mine's not totally detailed, but I mean, I put stuff in it every day.
And no one
just
gave-
for me,
Yes.
not just for me.
No one gave me one, but I made one. That same kind of thing
Okay.
when I first started, just because I wanted to know what I was doing
Yeah.
a week at a time, 2 weeks at
Yeah.
a time.
Yeah,
I made
and
one
then you
for
can
my
kind of like
students.
refer back, and then when, I'm just long-term subbing, so then when the teacher comes back, she will at least know what I did.
Did you guys get
I
that
applaud
as
you.
part of TIP?
Huh?
Did you guys get that in your
Yes.
first few days?
Yes.
What?
That weekly plan?
Yeah. Topic calendar, weekly planner, yeah.
I kind of need one for my dad's.
Yeah.
So flip this over to the other side. And you'll see that I put in objective. The student will demonstrate their ability to successfully interview for part-time employment. What I'd like you guys to do, we're going to break it up in a few groups and give you guys some time to work on it. So using this objective, yeah, you guys work on that. Yeah.
You guys about done? All right. All right, guys, let's start with this group. And let's go ahead and talk about your overview.
Overview and purpose, how to interview for a job so that the student can obtain employment.
Okay. Anyone continue first?
Jesse, say that again. How to interview
Oh,
for a
sorry.
job. I'm going to try and.
Oh, he's typing, I'm sorry.
I got it.
Try.
Okay. How to interview for a job.
Yep.
So the student can obtain employment.
And that's kind of like the same as the objective, right?
Similar.
Yeah.
For our set, we did, we're gonna watch Step Brothers, the job interview.
Oh, God. That's a good one.
That's a good one.
Clip.
What's it called? Step Brothers, How to Interview for a Job?
A
Yes.
job interview, yeah, it's
You can find
hilarious.
that on YouTube.
And it's on YouTube?
Oh, yeah. It's great.
I've seen Step Brothers, so I think they went together, right, for this
Yeah.
interview?
Tells you all the wrong ways.
Yeah.
And sorry to jump in already, but you can do things that are the right way to do things and the wrong way to do things, absolutely. And you might get more reaction from some of the wrong ways to do things.
Actually, should I bring up what happened yesterday?
You may.
Okay. So really quick, yesterday was National Cheeseburger Day, so I went with my wife to the Habit.
Write that down.
Yeah, National Cheeseburger Day.
It really
yesterday.
was?
Oh, yeah.
Damn, I missed it. It actually was.
Okay. I had no idea.
So I went to the Habit. We're sitting there, and right across from us, there's this kid, sweatpants, flip-flops, t-shirt, backwards baseball cap. And he's sitting there kind of nervous, and my wife is like, I think this kid's in the interview. It's like, there's no way this kid's dressed like that for an interview. Next thing you know, this lady pops up from the Habit, and she's like, I don't know, assistant manager or something. So she's asking the guy a couple of questions. The guy says, I'm available this date. So she comes in, brings in the main manager. He comes in, sits with this guy, and we're right across watching and listening. And the guy starts going into detail about what the job would pertain, about making cheeseburgers and shredding lettuce. The kid stops him right in the middle and says, I've cooked cheeseburgers at home. I know the procedure. And so the guy is like, okay, well, when are you available? And the kid right off the bat was like, well, I need this time off. Guy didn't have the job yet, and he's already telling him he needs time off. So at that point, the guy gets up, the manager says, I'm kind of busy right now, and I kind of have a full staff. So we'll call you if we have any openings. The kid gets up, doesn't even shake his hand or anything, and just walks away. The manager kind of gives us a look, and he's like, just shaking his head, walks away. The kid walks to the next booth. His girlfriend's waiting there. They had food to go. So they ordered food. She was sitting there waiting for him for the interview, and they walk out. I'm looking at my wife going, I can't believe
He's not getting hired.
You know.
That and the way he was dressed.
Yeah, so that would have been like the perfect thing. I was telling my wife, that would have been perfect if you showed like our students what not to do. But yeah, but that was really interesting. It happens all the time. Okay, so sorry.
That's okay.
All right, and then we're redoing materials, right?
Yeah. Did we do objectives? We did.
The objectives, yeah. So then, as far as the material, you're going to use a video, right?
Yeah.
Anything else?
Dress clothing, a
Okay.
computer, notebook, and a pen.
All right, so you good, David? All right, so now
Thank you.
our next group: input, modeling, checking for understanding. What do you got?
For our input, we put like printouts and internet searches. The students can do some of their own internet searches.
Okay,
No one's talked about soft skills yet.
all right. So,
Probably soft skills in the
So-
too, right?
so would that be part of the search?
Yeah, what is soft skills?
What is soft skills? Soft skills? Okay.
In the input,
Yeah, right.
Resources needed.
Modeling, of course.
Understanding, guided practices, independent practice.
So you could say, so David has what are soft skills? They can find the basics. That could also lead into the modeling later. One thing I used to do with my students, I'd have, kind of get a little creative with them. I'd have one group what to do, and another group just be wacky. What not to do, kind of like a Step Brothers type of situation. And then actually looking at it, I'd tape them. And then I'd show them at the end. So I actually separated the groups so they didn't get to see what they were doing. And at the end, I'd show the video, and I'd say, okay, who would you hire? And we had a good time with it, but at the same time, with that critical eye, there were little things like, well, that shirt wouldn't work, and they're not supposed to wear a hat, and oh, they said this really well in the interview, but they missed this part. So this way, they were actually critiquing themselves, but at the same time, helping each other on what to do and what not to do, especially when they were looking for jobs out there. Just other ideas out there. Anything else for modeling?
For modeling, we talked about like handouts because like I've already printed out things for them off the internet search for like top 10 interview questions, examples of a good and bad resume for them to see.
In fact, what's the number one question? It's always going to be like, tell me about yourself. And most people tend to go into, well, I'm a Virgo and I like this and
Yeah, tell
Star
me a little
Wars.
bit about yourself.
And sometimes they need to understand when they say, tell me about yourself, it's your job experience, your education, your skills. And sometimes when you hear that in an interview, in pharmacy, when I do interviews all the time, I'd have kids right off the bat telling me their whole life story. And while they're doing that, they're also admitting things that they shouldn't be saying in an interview. So as far as resources, we're looking at internet, laptops. You got the handouts. Good, David?
What about your CRS, your career readiness specialist?
Yeah, I've actually talked to mine.
Could they come in as a guest speaker?
Yeah. We had check for understanding too.
Oh,
That was ours too.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Go for it.
Well, we kind of talked about like checking their resume. So that would be checking for understanding is to be able to see their resume. Maybe doing mock interviews with them that we're a part of. So like my plan is for them to do individual resumes or interviews with each other and then do like a panel interview where maybe they're having to deal with 2 or 3 people at one time.
I used to bring in some friends just to come in as a practice run. So in pharmacy, I'd bring some of my pharmacist friends to come in. And just for like an hour, or half an hour, I'd have them come in, briefly talk about what they do, and then take a kid or two, or even get a group interview going, just to be on the safe side that it may not be a one-on-one. It could be 4 people interviewing you at once. So getting them used to the fact that there's multiple different ways of interviewing, especially if you're doing it digital now. Some people are just interviewing through Zoom or through any type of FaceTime device or Skype. And that's another way of doing interviews and actually getting some of my pharmacist friends who are not available to come down, but doing it via Skype. And then that was another way to get the students prepared, just in case.
So under guided practice, we basically just put down that the students would interview each other during the class time. And then standards and competencies addressed would ask that they would, whoever that company would be, they would research the company before. Talk about eye contact, dressing professionally. What kind of language are they using? A good handshake. What is a good handshake?
Body language.
And to formulate some questions such as, how do you see my value if I come into the company? What are your expectations? Who will supervise me? Asking questions to make sure that the employer knows they're interested.
I used to tell my students you should have at least 3 questions to ask because it shows the person that you're interested in the job. one thing that in the back of my mind when I was doing interviewing is like, they don't seem like they're interested. And then the questions not to ask, of course, like, how much am I gonna get paid? What's my day off gonna look like? That's the type of stuff, that's the killer of the interview, You only get one chance to make that first impression, and if that's the kind of thing you're bringing up in the interview, I always tell them that discussion doesn't usually happen until they bring it up first.
Something about that, when I interviewed for this job, I actually wrote out my questions down in a little notebook. And I brought it, and they're like, do you have any questions for me? And I'm like, actually, let me pull out my notebook. And I opened it up, and it looked like a huge list. It wasn't, I just wrote a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah.
By the way, I always tell my students, there's nothing wrong with having extra copies of your resume, because if you give your last copy of your resume out and you're super nervous, at least you have your resume out, and you can already tell, oh, I forgot, I gotta bring that up now, because I forgot to bring that up in the initial part of the question. I gotta come back to that. Or the questions, I always say, put your questions on the back of your resume. So this way, that last resume is just your notes and everything. You just automatically turn it around, and you're not as nervous because you have something to fall back on a little bit. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being prepared. Nothing wrong with that at all. Independent practice?
And then under independent practice, we put down that they can do YouTube videos and actually practice on family members at home. And then I think one of the biggest items is actually teaching them the value of preparing a portfolio, getting letters of recommendation, putting down if you were volunteering somewhere. So let's say it's a student that hasn't had a job. Have you volunteered? What have you done for the community to show that they are
that you're part of that community? Yeah,
exactly.
I always tell my students, I never worked before, and I always tell them, did you volunteer somewhere? Well, I did some stuff for my church. Why is that not on your resume? Well, I didn't get paid for it. No, it doesn't matter. Work experience is work experience, whether you got paid or not. If you did anything for the church, you volunteered for the Red Cross, you did something in a hospital, all that counts. Put that in there. It shows you are part of the community. It shows a form of customer service as well, that you're out there. It's just a great way for those kids that don't think that they're going to get hired because they never worked, you have some skills. Put that down on the resume. There's nothing wrong with that. Bring that up in the interview. Sell yourself.
So of my years of interviewing, I can count on one hand the number of qualified people that came in with an actual portfolio. And I mean CPR, everything in there.
All their licenses,
everything that they had. And it is very impressive. And so I teach my students from the get-go. We start that at the beginning. And then actually in class with my students, the adult students, we actually do bring in an employer to interview them at the end.
Right.
And they do that actual interview, they dress, they do everything, the part, and then we get the feedback from the interviewer. And a lot of times they'll say, as soon as they get their license, send them to me, I'm interested.
You guys do mock interviews?
We do the mock interviews,
Okay.
yeah.
So
But they're actual interviews too, where the employer comes here
awesome.
For the class, so yeah. Okay.
And some of you guys are having mock interviews set up yet, or not yet, or?
I have them on my plan for 2 weeks from now.
Okay, awesome. All right.
The key assignment I know.
It's in there.
Yeah. This group pulled out their course outline in there with the key assignment. You could just, I would usually put what key assignment it was, and I type out the key assignment as well too. This could be handwritten or it could be typed, but something that became a bigger thing in the last couple of years was closure. If each of your lessons on a daily basis ends with some sort of summary, like closure is not just the bell ringing and people running to put the laptops away. Maybe it's a 5-minute share out about what we learned, what's their one key point from that day. Maybe it's some sort of exit ticket. You were going to say something.
I was just going to say the same thing. At the end of every single class I have, they know the last 5 minutes, everybody has to tell me what nugget are they taking away from tonight's class. So that's pretty powerful. And it's amazing sometimes what it is.
And you can use it the next day as an entry ticket. What was that one thing? When we were talking about handshake, many of you are probably at the door practicing handshakes with them as well too. There you're modeling the behavior. What you're wearing that day, how you're presenting yourself, how you're prepared, having something for them is all about modeling too.
Eye contact, body language, actually your voice even, you know, especially if you're trying to sell yourself as you have a lot of experience in customer service, but then you're talking really loud.
So when we just did that lesson plan thing, and when you were looking for lesson plan on the website, if you don't remember that whole direction I went to, James, if you would click on site search and just type lesson plan, because I honestly don't remember that whole path. It's right here, effective lesson planning, and so there's a shortcut to it. So we talk about assessment, and assessment is when you are getting information, seeing how the students are doing. And we don't typically do testing in ROP classes, or not traditional testing all the time. It's not irregular. We do a lot of assessment, a lot of projects, planning, things like that. But on lesson plans, you might see this formative or summative assessment. It's also kind of like guided practice and independent practice, which one's which, and which is formative and which is summative. So, feeding minds here. Formative versus summative assessment. Formative is throughout the lesson. Checks for student understanding in order to plan subsequent lessons. Questioning, checking in with students, checking for understanding. Helps students and teachers identify gaps in learning, and enables the teachers to respond quickly to student needs for additional resources. If you've gone over something, you see they're not getting it, okay, what do I have to do to help further explain this situation? Help them understand it. Summative comes at the end or conclusion. So use at the end of a unit or course to assess if a student has mastered content standards. So think of traditional testing here. Could have a bigger impact on students' overall grade. It might be a bigger assignment and worth more points than some sort of daily lesson. Evaluate students against benchmark and standards. So around the room, in the back, there's 5 back here in plastic sheet protectors. Whole presentation portfolio, creative assignment, journals. 5 more over here, written test, product, exit ticket, think, pair, share, end of unit test, and a batch up here as well too. And what I've done on each table is giving you some cut Post-its. If you think any of these are a formative that happened during or throughout a lesson, put an orange one on there. If you think any of them are summative and come at the end, put a blue one on there. And if you need more, let me know. I've got more.
I need a blue.
Take a stroll. You're welcome.
So blue for summative?
Blue for summative, orange for formative.
You don't know how. It's a learning process,
James.
Yeah.
So as you take a look around, you're seeing a lot of consensus between all of you. And there might be some overlap. There might be some that would be summative and formative. It might happen both. That's kind of where things fall. Summative at the end, you think of tests, end of unit, kind of as a giveaway. Creating some sort of product at the end, something tangible that they've made, a written report that reports back on the information. Whereas the things over on the left, class discussion. Getting feedback and what they've learned. Checklists, have they done this, have they done this? Questionnaires, journals, reflective journals, having some sort of answer might be more formative.
Put like blue on exit ticket. We all put blue on
I
exit
didn't.
ticket.
Not me.
Well, and
That was a trick question, wasn't it?
I mean,
Well,
what's
no.
exit?
It was
No.
a trick question.
No.
You're not supposed to put trick questions
No.
on a test.
I didn't put no
I-
question on
I also put
It was
orange
not
on,
that.
I put orange on product because that's just a product. If
Yeah.
it was a final product, I would put blue on it.
Yeah, and it might depend on
No,
how
'cause the
you've
students
taken
will-
it.
Could some of them be both? Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah, some of them could be both. I mean, an exit ticket could also be your end product. That's something like based on the project, you get an exit ticket.
Yeah, because we do quality control in my class, and if the product doesn't meet the requirements, it gets sent back and they redo it, so it does.
Now there's redos. Do a redo.
For sure. What are rubrics?
Not Rubrics.
That, I don't know what rubrics are. I have no clue.
Luckily, you're gonna find out.
Well, So rubrics are a way you can grade students' work without subjectivity. It reduces your time you spend grading work, assigns grades uniformly, helps students judge the quality of their work because they know what you're looking for beforehand. Allow teacher to accommodate diverse students, gifted, disabilities, and more.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, rubrics now are being used a lot more in colleges. I'm finishing my master's degree, and almost every one of my classes, there's a rubric. And basically, it's the way of the professor saying, if you want an A, this is what you need to do. And it's an easy way of grading because it's like, this is what I expect, hit these marks, here's what you would hit for an A, here's what you hit for a B, and so on. So it's just a really great way of basically telling the student what they want. More colleges, professors are just using rubrics now, especially for online classes. You'll see them a lot more too.
Yeah, I did. But how do you design one? Like, I think a lot of the teachers just go by, I mean, I don't know. Does anybody in here use rubric?
It does take some time to design.
Yeah, I know a lot of my
there's lead time in
friends
the
don't.
beginning. It will save you time in the end. Like they talked about, in the first column, identify the criteria or characteristic of the assignment to be measured. So if you think back to interviewing, in greeting, a full point greeting, all points, professional behavior and language, handshake, hello, friendly and courteous to all involved in the interview. So across, I've got excellent, good, and poor. That's the quality of the work. For the remaining columns, describe the various degrees of quality. What are some quality descriptors? I gave you one that was 3 wide. You could do one that was 4 wide. That's up to you. It might depend on the assignment. There are different types of rubrics you can do. We did a simple one just to start and get an idea. This one up here is for an essay assignment, so across the top, excellent 20 points, average 15 points, or 10 points. You could do a range of scores as well too, and probably next time or the time after that, you'll get into grading a little bit more in tip. There's some that would say poor would be 0 points, or poor would be 10 points, 50%, but there's ranges you can do. Topic sentence. Interesting and informs reader of concepts, full points. Average informs reader of concepts. So like maybe they're reporting on something, but it's not interesting. They're not using creativity. And poor, unclear topic with few ideas. So you see across that there's a difference of what that scoring is. Here in usage and mechanics, skillfully uses words and clauses to link sections of the text. While average uses words. Skillfully uses words. Few, if any, words and clauses to link the sections of the text. So there's a differentiation between what's excellent, what's average, what's poor. If you take a look at this one that I handed to you, again, back in this greeting line. Greeting, excellent or exceed standards. Professional behavior and language, handshake, hello, thank you. Friendly and courteous to all involved in interview. Good, meet standards. Acceptable behavior, it wasn't professional, acceptable now. Well-mannered, professionalism somewhat lacking. Courteous to all involved in the interview. Poor, below standards. Unacceptable behavior and language. Unfriendly and not courteous. So it guides across where does this person fall. So you're not just given a subjective A or a subjective B. There's something concrete or something to back up your grading, how you're assessing. What we'd like you to do, and we're starting to run a little short of time, if you guys would take communication and work on that line there. What would be excellent? What would be good? What would be poor? Guys here in the middle, body language. What would be excellent body language in an interview? What would be good body language? What would be poor? And then same for appearance, image. What would be excellent? What would be good? What would be poor?
Eye contact.
It will take 10 minutes maybe.
So, with yours, what did you come up with for excellent, good, and poor when it comes to You guys are doing communication, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Communication.
We'll say excellent and well-spoken, clear and concise sentences and answers, right? Appropriate tone, positive attitude, and good eye contact.
Go ahead.
Clear and concise
No,
answers.
No.
Don't worry,
Okay.
I'm not that fast.
Okay, then good is few pauses in speech, decent answers, no slang or straight language, civil tone, and weary eyes, which is like, they might make eye contact, but every now and then they're staring off in the corner. They're up at the roof.
Weary?
Weary eyes, yeah. And then poor would be many pauses in speech, too many uhs or I don't knows, illogical answers, aggressive or uncaring attitude, and no eye contact, little or no eye contact.
All right, next one, body language. Start with excellent.
We put consistent eye contact,
Okay.
good posture,
Okay.
and
Good smile.
good smile or
Smile.
like facial expression.
Okay.
We say positive facial expression.
Positive, there you go. Like that.
Good.
All right.
Good, we put inconsistent eye contact, inconsistent facial expression, somewhat fidgety, no eye contact.
For poor?
Yeah, no eye contact, poor posture, like maybe slouching, arms folded, no facial expression, not focused.
Could you also say something as far as body language? Could you also say or communication, like the tone of voice?
Would that go with communication?
Probably more communication, but yeah, tone of voice could also be a good one. Yeah.
So did we get an A?
Oh,
Did we get 20 points?
C on.
A minus.
Okay. No, we want 20 points. We will fight that.
You have
Great.
extra credit?
Extra credit?
Credit, yes.
Do I have an extra credit ticket?
No homework.
I turned in all my assignments, why don't I have an A? Why don't I have 100? And then Ginny and Christian and Ryan's and Jeff's, I typed theirs already in. Appearance, professional attire, business neutral colors, collared shirt and tie. Good, casual attire, untucked button-up, jeans. Poor, unprofessional attire, sweatpants, hat, flip-flops. This is almost like Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Yeah.
Friday night.
Yeah.
So we were really quick on that, but it starts to give you an idea of kind of creating the categories, what's acceptable, what's excellent, what are you really looking for, what's okay, what's not okay. And like I said, you could do it across 4 categories. You could do range of scores. It might be a little early to introduce the idea, but it's something coming down the pipeline.
In fact, when you talk about mock interviews, for example, it could be a great way for some of the students that say, well, the person who interviewed me said, I did okay, but I'm not sure why. Well, this would be a great way for you to give your mock interviewers a guide on what they're looking for and how to grade the student. So when it comes back to you and you're telling the student this is what they thought, you have it all set up here. So there's no guesswork on why they got that grade. It's all written out.
Now, do you do a rubric on everything?
No, I would do it on
Like a project.
Because the
On a-
colleges do it on
on a
everything.
summative assessment at the end, the big
Yeah.
project.
It could be the
Okay.
big project, it could be
So
the
maybe
big lab
midterm?
assignment.
Midterm?
Maybe.
Would
Possibly,
that
yeah.
be considered
I think it
rubric?
can be part of your grading system for maybe 10% of the grade because it gives some flexibility
Mhm.
in like class participation and other things that they don't necessarily get a grade for with testing.
Maybe like professionalism,
Yes.
you know,
yes.
professionalism grade, something like that.
Hmm.
Coming to
Okay.
class on time is like coming to work on time.
Maybe you guys the students do this instead.
You can
That's
have
a
them
great
work on creating
project.
the rubric, yes, as well too. And there are all kinds of rubrics. There's all kinds of lesson plans online already created that you can tweak. You don't have to start at the beginning.
It has a rubric for you?
Some lesson plans, some rubrics.
Some examples of what you could
Yeah.
use.
Yeah, Jenny.
I think what we have to be difficult, at least what we find in our program is there's a fine line between how much credit you give this, because if you give it too many points, it can take a C student and move them all up to an A, where really in their testing they're not doing as well. So I think that's the difficulty, is finding out how many points do you want to give these rubrics along with your testing and your midterms and your finals. That's the difficult part, I think.
So it could move somebody up from a C to an A.
It kind of has already, and that doesn't feel good.
See, and right now I'm grading on percentage, like
Right.
how much they get for classwork, homework, how much they get for tests and quizzes. Because that's pretty much all my teacher friends, that's how they did it, so that's just how I set it up.
I do low numbers.
Huh?
I do low numbers. Everything's low.
Yeah, it can't be like I've had
Everything's
daily,
like really high.
it can't be
Like
I've had
20
daily
points.
assignments that were 10 points and this is 1,000.
Yeah.
It still has to stay in.
I'll do daily points too. So if you don't do the work today, you have your points every day that I grade
That's
every
right.
day.
10 points max every day.
Or let's say you have that big project.
Yeah.
Is that,
I'll give
you
them a
know,
little bit more for a project, but most of the time it's 5-10 points a day, but if they're working on a project, I may offer them 25.
So next time, when your regularly scheduled presenters are here, how can you prepare for the switchback? It's titled next time. So Deidre asked that you would journal a minimum of once a week in the Chaos Coordinator. Next time will be on classroom management, so focus on the good, the bad, the ugly. There will be fun there. Include an entry on how reflection can improve your instructional practices. And thank you for being here today. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome.